lots to talk about, of course, as you said, at the back of the Europa League. We have the good thing is we've progressed in the Europa League. The bad thing is the battle of who's worse, Manchester United or Tottenham Hotspur this weekend, ended up with Man United leapfrogging us in the table to 13th. We're now 14th in the Premier League and 15 losses in the Premier League.
It's just becoming silly. It feels like when I started supporting Spurs and we were, like the one day Ramos days, and it just is like a flash in the pan, isn't it? And, you go off the high of that Europa League game, a lot of fight, really good squad, and we looked a bit shaky in some of it, but I think you go into the Fulham game, lots of changes, you're not going to get as much harmony. I know a lot of people have called for Ange to make changes to rotate, but he's really picking and choosing the wrong times to do that.
Absolutely.
And you're not going to get any consistency, any momentum going into that Eintracht Frankfurt game if you're heading to Fulham, who are a very good team, and we'll talk about their manager in a bit as well, but it's not good. It's going to really be bad for the players in the long term.
Holly, another loss before an international break. As Sonny mentioned, all those changes. I thought, Thursday night, seeing Maddison in the midfield, he was dynamic. The goals came through him. To see him dropped again was disappointing for me.
It was the biggest kind of baffling moment for me, because I saw the lineup and I was like, oh, okay, we've had a lot of changes, fine, cool, bit of fresh legs. But to see that midfield and have no creativity in there, I'm thinking, hang on a minute, mate. We've got to do something here. And having no Maddison, no Bergvall. I know Bergvall was obviously, he was holding his hamstring towards the end of the Frankfurt game. So it was kind of a bit like, yeah, fair enough, all right. But I was certain Maddison was going to start. I feel like he just finds Maddison a little bit of a bad egg, Ange, because, again, there was no reason not to start him, I don't think.
Yeah, no rhyme or reason, especially after his performance in the week. The first half was so drab. I think we had 3 touches in the opposition box. Now, this is what my problem is at the moment. It was always the whole Ange ball philosophy, and we're all waiting for that. He's had his players back now for at least 3 games. 45 minutes of football away from home, 3 touches in the opposition half.
I just think what annoys me is, I think since Pochettino's days, we haven't been able to stitch 2 45 minutes together. We either start well or we end well. It's never a whole game where I sit there and go, that was fantastic, that was a good display. And then what we moaned about under Conte and Jose was, this is dire football. We were sometimes getting results, but then the results dried up. It's now happening for Ange. At the beginning of the season, you'd watch games like Leicester, Newcastle. We might lose, we might draw, but we still, we had our chances. Yeah. You can see it's there. It's gone. It's not there at all. And I think what summed it up was the second goal, the Ryan Sessegnon goal, which was scored, fun enough, at the hammy end. So, he's dodgy with his hamstrings, and has problems with hamstrings as well. But Ange is literally putting his hand up for offside and not really berating the back line, who Jed Spence had a bit of a mare, Ben Davies had a bit of a mare.
Davies had more than a mare. He got wrestled by his former colleague.
It's all gone to pot, and I just don't think now. I was pretty much Ange out from the Everton game. I still want it to work, but I just can't see.
But why? Why do you want it to work? For what reason?
To prove Daniel Levy wrong, I think. To show that we can go and build this project, but that's the problem. It will always be Daniel Levy is the problem, but I still don't think Ange Postecoglou is the solution in the long term, because we've chucked a lot of money at him, we've given him players which we didn't give to Conte and Mourinho, and now you just look at the results and the performances against sides where you'd hope Tottenham would turn up with that squad and that team as well. It should not be 14th, without a shadow of a doubt, but you just know now, we're just waiting to the end of the season for that curtain to fall, because we're not going to win the Europa League either, I don't think.
Former players coming back to haunt us again, as we mentioned, Sonny, there with the Sessegnon, on the same day that Kieran Trippier became the 65th player to leave Spurs since the last time we won a trophy, to win some major honours. It just gets to the point of the frustration is just coming to boiling point.
It really is. I think I know we're a curse at times, but to see, like you say, Trippier win another trophy, the way that we kind of, going back to the point of starting games, I don't know, and with Ange, I don't know whether, like you say, what is he actually saying to those players? Because there's no mentality. And like we've kind of alluded to, the only thing we can win this season is Europa. And great, we're through to the next round. But if we carry on playing and starting games we do the way we have been under Ange, we're not going to win that trophy.
Winless in 3 Premier League games. Any other manager by now would have got the boot. I don't understand.
At Tottenham as well. Jose Mourinho got sacked for less, didn't he?
Before a final.
Exactly.
A guy that can win trophies on the day, he knows how to win it, he gets sacked. What is the hold Ange Postecoglou has at the moment over Spurs, the fact that no one's out there, or what is it?
Can I just say, first of all, on Newcastle, Tottenham wouldn't be able to do that either.
No.
We would not turn up to that Wembley final as the underdogs with that 70-year drought that they've had.
They won it before the whistle was blown.
Exactly.
They really won it by
It was just pure fight. And the thing is, and I've said this a couple of weeks ago on one of the shows, Daniel Levy has kept Ange on for the cups because the league was pretty much done, but there was a week where we were still in the Europa League, the FA Cup and the League Cup. But we were embarrassing in those and we didn't show any fight, any grit, any determination. And that could have cost him his job. But the Europa League, even though I think in the league stage of the Europa League, we weren't at all convincing against sides like AZ, Ferencvaros and
all the big names.
Galatasaray.
All the big ones. So
I really am confused as to what has happened. And then you play the AZ game in the knockout stage, the first leg, we were shocking in that. And then AZ Alkmaar, there were stages when they scored that goal where I thought they're going to come back into this. I've seen this script a million times at Tottenham.
I saw it with Roma at the end of the Roma game.
Exactly. So I just don't know whether, and this is my theory as well. Like everyone's saying, but look at the injuries. He's had so many injuries. First of all, loads of teams have had injuries. Look at Arsenal, for example, as well. But in my opinion, Ange has caused these injuries. I think there was a stat saying that 40% of the Premier League's hamstring injuries were at Tottenham. So there's
says something, doesn't it?
So every player's got injured. You've had Kulusevski's been running to the ground. Kevin Danzo's just signed and got an injury. Dominic Solanke was never injured at Bournemouth. He's been injured this season. It's just becoming ridiculous. And there's not many times where you can. This style of football does not work in the Premier League. He can't adapt. He can't change his philosophy based on opponents, and that's what a lot of top managers across Europe and also in the Premier League do. They face each opponent. So when they play Man City, they play them different to how they play Southampton.
Absolutely.
Ange plays the same way every week. And yeah, we had that opening 10 games last season, and we've had a few spells this season, like City 4-0, but that's not good enough if you're not consistent. You've got to be doing it week in, week out.
But you mentioned those 10 games at the opening of last season. I always throw one name at people, right? Perisic. People forget about what the quality Perisic had.
That's good,
Still in the Champions League until the other week with PSV, scoring goals in the Champions League. And if you rewatch those games, he came on and changed the games because he had that little bit of magic in him because he was a world-class player.
Yeah.
For some reason, as we mentioned, his inability to find how to use Maddison, I think, is one of the biggest problems that we have. Because when Maddison is on, as I go back to that game on Thursday, we saw Ange ball for one moment, and it started at the back, and it came through. Yeah. Maddison dipped his shoulder, and we was gone. At the moment, how is Maddison supposed to play through those lines when you're coming up against two low blocks all the time? Fulham did it so well, but they were so able to just break on us, and their press was brilliant as well. The way they just won the ball back straight, and they were gone. Ange has no answer to this when people set up like that.
No, they really don't. And I think that's the thing. I think we've seen it far too many times this season. Like I said, it's the same way we play every single week. And it's getting to a point now where
the players are saying it when they come off. And they're being seen on screen talking about
doing
it.
The old...
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing at Spurs at the moment. Obviously, we had Ange come in, he kind of brought the fans together, but now it's doing the absolute polar opposite because it's the same thing week in, week out. And like I said, the players are thinking the same thing. The only thing I can think that he's still at this club is purely because if he goes and Levy has to sack him, it's another failure. And that does not look good on his head. And we've been here before, like we said, where Jose was sacked 4 days before a final. Maybe in his head of his, he's thinking, if I sack him again, that's it, the fans are on my back. But if I give it a bit of time, he doesn't win the Europa League, then sack him, my head's kind of a little bit freer than what it would be if I sack him right now.
We're going to have our third wild goose chase again. Do you remember that summer where we were looking at Gattuso and Fonseca? And
Fonseca, yeah.
We got all those names going to pop up again probably. And it's just... I think Levy is running out of ideas because he went from one extreme to the next, hasn't he? He's gone all for the defensive and the winners. He's now gone for a project that he doesn't really want to back. He's played all his cards. That's what it is.
Absolutely. And, the frustration is really showing to the point of confrontation with the manager and fans. Yet again, this isn't an individual instance. He's come back out. First and foremost, I like the fact he went over to the fans and in a discussion with them. He said, look, we need you. But this is a guy that supposedly didn't want to come to us. We had to beg him. So I can't really trust too much in what he's saying. But to see Ange out there, he was asked a question. Okay, it was kind of rudely put to him with some curse words. But no one was personal to him or attacked him or anything other than, what was that? If we do a really bad podcast today, I expect people to go, guys, What was that? You know,
Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. I'm sure there'll be some comments, but you know, he has to be accountable. You're the manager. Why am I seeing yet another defeat in the Premier League before an international break after all these ridiculous changes? Like, what does he think he's going to do with the fans by arguing with them?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing as well, the fact that the way he's doing it, you're a manager of this club. If you hear noises like that and comments coming from the crowd, just walk away.
Don't buy it.
Just leave it. And I think the biggest thing for me was seeing Tell, a player that's only just come to the club, like you said, and is not a senior part of this senior role at the club, and he's gone into the crowd to go and have a chat. Now, don't get me wrong, we don't necessarily know what was said. I know he said he wants to be all together, but why am I not seeing the likes of Sonny? Or why am I
They all
not seeing
walked
the
off,
likes?
though, didn't they? They all walked off at that stage.
Because who are the leaders in
isn't
this
any.
team? Because Sonny, as much as I love him, he's got all the credit in the bank with me because of who he is and what he's done for us. He's an ambassador. I want him at the front door, waving people in. Hello, guys. We've got Beyonce here. The F1's here as well. There's no trophies, but you can come and have a good time in the F1. That's what he is. Who's the leader? And that's what I'm saying. This manager is unable to do that and find that in this team.
I think Tell's a loan fee. I think he's been signed as a player liaison officer instead of a striker. But I think what's happened with Ange is we've seen he was the media darling for a little while, and everyone was like, "Oh, isn't he a breath of fresh air? You know, it's who we are, mate," and you know all that sort of rhetoric. And now it's like he's
drops
rude.
quickly.
He's looking at the floor all the time in his interviews. He's not got any answers. It's excuses, and you know. In modern football, the manager is basically the press officer. He's the face of the football club, and if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen because he's this close to going full Conte and Mourinho and calling out Levy. I think he's just a bit more of a puppet than he is compared to those managers. So it's not a strong look because I think the fan was a Fulham fan, but that's still the point stands. You had to go at Tottenham fans right behind you in the dugout. You've had to go at a Fulham fan near the tunnel. Just don't buy it. Just don't buy it. And you've got to, soak it up and realise you're 14th in the Premier League. You're going to get people, throwing stones at you.
So, Holly, are you Ange in or out?
That's a very good question. To be honest with you, right now, I would say I'm Ange in purely because we have that Europa League. And call me silly, but I just think I've sat here before when we've had Jose and we sacked him 4 days before a final. I don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, but we got sacked before a final against Manchester City, the Manchester City of the time, which was very different. So it's like the likelihood of him beating them. When we had Ryan Mason, who didn't start Gareth Bale in the final, which was absolutely mad. My question is, why should I trust him to take us through those next games of the Europa League? What has he done to prove that to me? I was at Anfield when we got battered 4-0. I saw no handball. I saw us trying to defend a 1-0 lead at Anfield. So why should I trust this guy?
I think the only thing for me is right now, if we sack him right now, we've got, 17 days now till that kind of next game in the Europa League. I do not want to see Ryan Mason at the helm. I can't do that.
I agree with
He's
that.
gotta go.
I agree with
And
that.
I feel like that will be the first point of call, and I just can't be dealing with that. The only thing I can kind of hold, there's not many straws left, don't get me wrong. I am closer to seeing I'm Ange out. The only thing that's kind of gripping me in is the fact that he's managed to get a tune out of these young players. And I feel like they're the only ones that are necessarily playing for him.
But my counter argument to that is they're young, talented kids.
They've already got the talent.
And they've got the talent. Now, Jed Spence, who arguably has been our best player in the last few months, has been in the wilderness at Tottenham Hotspur due to being misunderstood. People thinking, the attitude, etc. That's, again, man management. And with the inability to man-manage teams, you will not get the best out of Mavericks. I always throw it back to Terry Venables and Gascoigne. Now, Terry Venables knew Paul Gascoigne would turn up to the training ground with a pellet gun and an ostrich. But he'd go on and play.
You're on your day, yeah.
And seems to be so rigid in his style, his stubbornness, the way he wants to play. I don't think him and a Maddison can never work together.
Yeah, it's just, I think at the moment it's more problems than solutions. I mean, you say about the youngsters and that. It gives me Gareth Southgate vibes at England. It's sort of like you've got this crop of talent in front of you, but it's like wrong place, wrong time for this manager yet again. And people were saying, Ange will leave and he'll go and go to another club and it'll be successful.
Yeah, I'm
but
sure
then
he will be.
that's on Daniel Levy then again, because we've seen it with Conte at Napoli and Jose at Fenerbahce. But I just think it goes to show that...
Well, they weren't that successful against Rangers.
That is true. I just think, to me, I mean, if you're going to go down that route of sacking, bring in a manager who can win that as in an interim, like Chelsea would always bring in Gus Hiddink.
Yeah.
Maybe Erik Ten Hag. That's my hot take. But he can win a trophy, and then you could just ditch him in the summer. Then you bring in another project manager because Ange has not got this is not the football to win knockout tournaments either. You've got to sometimes, soak up pressure in the opening 20, then, get yourself back into the game. Not just always on the back foot, because at the moment, it's not going to win knockout games. It's not going to win games in the Premier League. I don't know where it fits, because it's not, it might work in other leagues, because, you answered the question there. I was Ange out probably from the Everton game, because, don't get me wrong, David Moyes came in, really good manager bounce. It was fantastic for them. But that team is still better than Everton on paper. And to be 3-0 down at half-time away at Goodison, where we've had some good success over the years,
absolutely,
it's not good enough. It's just, you go into games now thinking you're going to lose, because we can't, as you said, Madge, can't break down low blocks. We can't, compete against the biggest teams, your Liverpools, conceding 6 at home. It's harrowing. It's really harrowing.